you all for tuning into our channel. And so, as we've mentioned in previous videos that we've recorded, we're going to be talking about a series of things. And so, but one thing that Lisette and I wanted to make top of mind is, there's a lot going on in our country right now. And it's always been, it's nothing new, but we wanted to kind of rethink about our agenda and our upcoming videos and decided to just interview each other for this next few videos. So for this round, Lisette's going to interview me, and then I'm going to interview her based on just our experiences as women of color, Lisette being Mexican-American, her heritage, and me being a Black woman, and talking really how we can work together as Black and brown folks. So stay tuned, it should be good. We are still new to this, so work with us during our transitions. Thank you so much.
I'll move on to our next segment, our next video segment, and really move towards more about how you landed in Chicago.
Okay.
How why did you come to Chicago? Like, I think that's a huge question, but I think it's also, sharing a little bit of how was it moving from the South to I would say a very non-traditional Midwest city. That's how I kind of always talk about Chicago. So just, really want to dig into that in your experience of like what it was moving from the South to here, Chicago.
Sure. Well, for me, up until I was early 20s, I spent most of my life in the South. And like I think you said something earlier, that's like all you've known is just life in the South. And so I knew, I think I said this back in our intro way back when, but my mother always called me her different child. And so, I take that with a grain of salt, but she's always been one like to tell me, you've always wanted more. You want more than Mississippi. You want more than the South, just because of, I consider myself to be very ambitious, and what I wanted and what I still want, I needed to leave. And so when I was applying to graduate schools, I was working as a mental health administrator in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I had worked there ever since I graduated from LSU. And I always knew I was going to go back to school. I didn't quite know in what capacity. Like a lot of students, I wanted to be a doctor. That's still, a dream of mine. Don't know if I can do it, but I always loved the study of the mind, psychiatry, psychology, how do people work, and how does the brain work, and how do societies work. So that has always kind of been a top of mind, and that still stays with me in a lot of sense. I still love studying those different things, but medical school is really hard to get into. And so I was like, well, let me think of other avenues. And so at that time, my mother, who had kind of been off and on, was caregiving for my grandmother, who was going through some memory loss, and really kind of prompted me to look more into caregiving and like mental health issues, because I was working as a mental health administrator, mainly working with young children and teenagers and early adults, and really dealing with people not knowing a lot about their care. And this, at the mental health facility I worked at, it was a range of socioeconomic status, from people who were there because they had some sort of voucher with the doctor, and people who came from these prominent Southern families. And so, but really they all kind of had this thing in common. No one quite understood mental health and what it meant, and even insurance policies. Like, what does it mean to have insurance? What does it mean to have mental health coverage under your insurance? A lot of people didn't know that. And top that on what was going on with my personal life, with my family and my grandmother, I just started looking at like, how can I take this and learn more? So I stumbled upon public health, and I was like, okay. So just started researching, learning more about it, looking at graduate school programs. And I ended up applying, obviously, to just a slew of places. Only applied to one place in the South. And I did get in to that institution. But I knew like that was the backup institution. So I applied to mainly East Coast schools. I had a few friends out on the East Coast. I was like, okay, I have some connections there. And then Chicago. And one thing I was really looking into was public transportation. So in Baton Rouge, the entire time, I've never owned a car. Never owned a car. I do not like driving. But when I'm home in Mississippi, like I drive. But I do not like it. So that was a big thing for me, was having a public transportation system. Now don't get me wrong, Chicago public transportation is not the best in the world, but we're the third largest city in the United States. So we have a pretty large public transportation system. And by most things, it's pretty effective. It gets you where you need to go. And that's what I really, really needed, because I knew I did not want to have a car. So that was a big part of it too. And one thing that I think some students may not necessarily realize is that when they're looking at schools or looking at graduate schools, you got to look at more than just the program. You got to look at everything else around it, the environment, transportation, the people, all sort of things. So that's really what I focused in on. It's not just the program, but learning more. And so I ended up accepting, I got into the Chicago program. And a part of it is that I really do think, because one of my undergrad professors at LSU, love her still to this day. She was a previous professor at the University of Illinois at Chicago. She wrote me a bomb recommendation letter, which that may have had something with me getting into the program. But I got accepted, and when I came up here, I had never visited Chicago ever. My little apartment that I was in Baton Rouge, which the cost of living down there is much better. So I can get like a $500 a month apartment. And it was like 700 square feet. It was amazing. Wonderful. I miss it so much. So I packed up my little apartment, and I sold things to friends or gave it away to like Salvation Army. And I remember, because I had already left my apartment, I was staying with a really good friend of mine in Baton Rouge. She let me stay with her until I flew out to Chicago. And I had 2 really big suitcases. They were like 50 pounds a piece, and a carry-on. And that was it. I packed up everything and got on the plane. And it was terrifying when I got here to Chicago, because I didn't know anybody. I had, like I said, never visited here. Come years later, which of course we will get into, I do have family here because my father was previously married, and since I've been here, I've been able to build my relationship with my older siblings. But at the time, I did not have that relationship, so it was very daunting, because it was like, as soon as you got off that plane, man, you're in a new place with, and one thing I hate to do, even now, we all have our phones, but I hate looking lost. I really hate looking lost. And when you're in a large city, the third largest city in the United States, you don't want to look lost. You really don't. And so this is so funny. Before I had like a smartphone, I think maybe I had like a Windows, or I think Windows had came out with phones, but it was like a simpler phone. It's not like these high-tech ones now. But it didn't do anything. And so I remember before my orientation at school, my formal orientation, I had went to the computer lab downstairs and printed out the directions of how to get to the Best Buy, because I had ordered a laptop, and I had ordered, it wasn't an iPhone, but I got another phone that was not the Windows, and I had to go pick it up. And I had no idea how to get there. So I had went to the computer lab and printed out, I think it was like MapQuest was a big thing back then. And so I printed out all the steps on how to get to the Best Buy so I can get my laptop and get my phone. And boy, that was terrifying, but I did it. I was able to take the bus. It took me a while before I got on the train. I don't know how long it was before I actually got on the train. Well, by myself. I would take a train with other students that I met. And I would take it with them, but it took me a while before I got on the train by myself, because I was so afraid I would get lost. We all do. I'm sure I did, but now I take the train. It's nothing really, once you get used to it. But
where each color goes.
And I was at one, it was like, what is the loop? What is this? And all these different colors. And I was like, oh my God. And man, I just remember that was so scary. But then like I had my orientation maybe
Mhm.
like the next day after I got my computer and my iPhone, and ended up meeting my current roommate. And then I've met some wonderful people here. Let's say you came a little bit later,
I
but
did come later.
you came a little bit later, but I've met some really great people
Mhm.
my first week really here, like in school. And I don't know if I had moved here without being in graduate school, would I have been able to meet people as soon as I did. But school does create that environment, which is why for me, you know, we have online learning now and online classes, and now we kind of have to because of COVID. But the one thing for me, you know, I've had people ask me, you know, if you go back to school, would you want to do it online or do it in a classroom? And I would actually prefer a classroom. As introverted as I like to think I am, but people say I'm not. You're shaking your head. I like, there's something about being in a classroom and like just getting to know people. Like it's scary and daunting, of course, because you don't know. You're like, hi, I'm Martina. You introduce yourself, and they may be like, okay, bye. Hey, it's a part of life, you know. But I really like being in the classroom. Don't get me wrong. I like doing online learning too, you know. But my preference has always been like to be on. I love being on a college campus, just the energy, to meet people. There's always so much going on. So after that first week, started to acclimate a little bit more, and you know, and I lived on campus my first year here again with my roommate. She lived in the same building, but she was not my roommate then. It was horrible on campus living, horrible. And coming from LSU, don't get me wrong, you know, go Tigers. Hey, we won the championship this year. I just have to put that out there. LSU spoiled me. I mean, it is a pretty penny for what I paid for, but I had my, you know, obviously, you know, you do have your own room, like your bedroom by yourself. LSU, man, I had, my own room. I had my own bathroom. I had a walk-in shower, in-unit washer and dryer, a dishwasher. You can have someone come clean every 2 weeks if you wanted, or if you want to clean yours. LSU spoils me, honey. I'm paying for it now, but they spoiled me. And when I came up here to Chicago and saw that raggedy ass apartment, the rug, honey, the carpet looked like somebody might have been murdered there. And when I sent them an email and was like, you need to come clean the carpet, I was like, oh, well, we cleaned the carpet. I sent them a picture because at that point I had my little high-tech phone. So I felt like I could send a picture then. And I was like, this looks dingy. Somebody came and cleaned it. So I will say, anytime I would put in a request, they were quick about it, but it was dingy. And I could only live there a year. And now I'm in my current place that I've been in ever since. So yeah. That was my experience moving from Baton Rouge to Chicago.
When you were talking about like, what you can afford in Louisiana versus what over here, I was like, oh, it's drastically different.
Girl, it's drastically different. Even now,
cost of living is real.
Cost of living is real. Even now, you know, my parents are currently separated, but my mom's still in Mississippi. My dad's up here in Chicago, or he's here in Illinois. But my mom has an apartment there, and my goodness, I think it's a little over $500, and she's like, oh my God, it's so expensive. And I told her how much I'm paying in rent. She's like, damn. And her apartment, she lives in a nice apartment complex. She has 2 bedrooms. She has a balcony, literally walk-in closet that she can like walk in, not the fake walk-in shit, real walk-in closet. Beautiful dishwasher, the appliances, $500 and some a month. So I do miss that, girl. I miss it. But you know, it's still cheaper than LA and New York. So can't complain too much.
I wanna ask you some things. I know I don't know if you've mentioned it now, but I know in the past we've talked about this, about sort of the Southern hospitality, is that Midwestern charm. Look at your face. It just tells me everything.
I'll put a little bit more lip gloss on for that one.
I think that's part of it, right? That's part of what that move. Like, I'd love to hear your perspective of it, because I've heard different things from even other Midwesterners, I think, that come to Chicago, and they're like, There's something different about Chicago when it comes to that Midwest uh, charm that people
Yeah.
hear about.
Yes. Now, I always like to preface things with disclaimers. Don't get me wrong. Chicago is a great city, but like all places, it has its issues, as we all know and can see on the news nowadays. Same thing with Mississippi and the South. We can see it all over the news. We know it has problems. But like I said, having grown up in the South pretty much the majority of my life, and even considering moving back there, it is a hospitality there. And I think, I have had friends of people I know, associates, tell me they ain't trying to go to the South. They damn sure ain't trying to go to Mississippi. And I take because that's my home state. And like I said, it has a lot of issues, but that's where I was born and raised. And so I'm like, oh my God, I want to go there. And these are often my friends of color. I get it, because you hear the horror stories. But, take that away, it is very hospitable. I think that's how we say hospitable. I said, okay. And like I mentioned with my family, having, my parents haven't lost their house, and that may just be, I don't think that's necessarily an isolated situation. I'm sure that happens here in Chicago too, and happens across the world. But it was just, to see all these people band together for my parents in their time of need. Even people you wouldn't even think would come out. People ask, how can I help? How can I be of service to you? I don't know if that necessarily will happen here, probably Chicago. I don't know. But even just like, there's a certain, like, a gentleman. There's a thing with being ladies. And I hate putting people in kind of like gender roles,
But yeah.
But speaking, I am a cis woman. So that's, how I think of a relationship.
How you view the world.
Yeah, that's how I view it. And so even like the gentleman, like the Southern gentleman's a real thing. Like men down there will open doors for you. They let you go in first. Like when you're in church, a man takes off his hat. They're just, even down to like your date can order for you, which some people think that's a little weird. I'm personally okay with that. If I tell you what I want, he want to order, that's fine. But that's also because probably I grew up in the South. So that's okay with me. Yeah. But it's just a different, things do move slower. So I've had people tell me it is slower now. It is. It's just like, when I go visit my mom, we sit on the balcony and we sit on the porch, and you just like people watch, you talk and catch up and you wave. Hey, I would love going over to my grandma's house. My grandmother, in her old house, she had a kitchen. She had a kitchen window that looked right out onto the street. Honey, she could see everything. She could see the cars passing by. She saw the neighbors just waving to people. And, it's just that type of neighborhood, the neighborhood thing. And people just are more respectful. Like, you don't let your children run about everywhere in the store or like in church. You sit down, you listen. It's just, those, and to me, I'm the same way. I'm like, God, if I have kids, please don't embarrass me. Don't go run around this church or run around this store acting a fool. Don't do it. No. And that's the way that I was raised. But here, honey, move to the South. I mean, move to Chicago.
Midwestern Charm.
That Midwestern Charm, I'm still waiting to see. So if somebody in the comments want to be like, explain a little bit more about that to me, that would be a great thing. Because now don't get me wrong, I have my friends that have come from other states, like either on the West Coast or the East Coast. And they come here and they're like, oh, they see it, but they're coming from states. I'm not going to call any state out, but they're coming from the states where they're not necessarily known for their hospitality anyway. So you're coming to Chicago and it's like, people here are so nice. I mean, don't get me wrong, like, excuse me, I've encountered all kind of folks, but yeah, it's just like, I'm still waiting to see that Midwest Charm thing. Like for me, like I'll walk in, and one thing I really hate when a guy will open the door, right? Thinking you about to go in. No, he goes in, but he will hold it for you while he's already in there. No, open the door. You let me go first. Like, but so when Lisette, maybe you know about the Midwest Charm. Have you experienced it? 'Cause honey, I haven't.
I mean, I've known no different.
Right, like you don't know any difference. And I'm assuming
Like,
you've been to the South, right? You haven't been to the South.
I've been, where have I been? Atlanta was probably the most I've been. And that was a very like, I was there for a few days and it was like for a retreat. So I had to get to experience like a lot of Atlanta.
Well, honey, you
Other than
started
that,
getting to Atlanta. That's different kind of Southern hospitality.
I know, that's what I'm saying. It's even different.
But it's still hospitality, you know. But you know, you have the different. There are different levels of the hospitality, but yeah, it's just overall just, and like having manners, you know. Not so, even here, I catch myself saying no, sir, yes, ma'am. People are like, oh, you don't have to do that, but it's a part of that's how I grew up. You know, I say yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. That's just my manners that I have. And it's so funny. I've had professors, and I had a boss too. My boss at my last job tell me, I can tell your parents raised you right. Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And I was like, I told my mama that, and she was like, see, I told you. My mom was something else. But I've always been like, oh, they was like, your parents raised you right. Mm-hmm. And that's always, I take great pride in that, to hear that.
Well, thank you for sharing your experiences of moving from the South to this Midwestern town, this little city called Chicago.
Just tucked away in Chicago. But you know, to say that, it's so interesting you say that real quick, because people, they say like Chicago's not like the rest of Illinois, and it's true. I've only been to a few smaller places, like I can count on my hand, and it's different.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna close this portion out, and move on. But I gonna pause a little bit, and we'll come back to sort of our next segment. So we'll see you soon, to all of our subscribers and you viewers, and we'll chat soon with you all.